Hello, I'm Mark, and this is a free extract from my best-selling online course, Better Business Writing Skills. Here you'll learn the skills, tips and tricks of powerful, persuasive writing. If you want to take your writing further, check out the link in the description below. Okay, let's get on with it. Hello. In this Better Business Writing Skills course, I'm going to teach you the techniques for great writing. Writing that your customers, your colleagues and your boss will love. If you're at work, think of all the emails, letters, reports and everything else that you write every day. How many hundreds of words must you write? And of all those words, how many of them are important? I imagine the answer is pretty much all of them. The fact is, if you work in an office or run your own business, then being able to write and to write well is essential. You may not realize it, but you are a professional writer. And that presents a problem. If you're a professional athlete, a dancer, or a musician, you work hard to be fantastic at what you do. You study, you practice, you rehearse. But if you don't realize that you're a professional writer, you may ignore the fundamental need, to be great at it. It's vital that every one of your words is working for you and not against you, helping you achieve your goals and not getting in their way. Poorly worded emails waste huge amounts of time. Confusing but vitally important reports are skimmed or ignored. Copy designed to entice new customers only pushes them away. You lose the sale, you stunt your business, you hobble your career. The fact is, if you want to succeed at work or in business, you need to be able to succeed at writing. Great writing is a skill that you can learn, and in this course, I'll show you how. To start, we'll look at what clear writing is and at the evidence as to why it's so important. The course is then divided into three main sections: before you write, when you write, and after you write. In part one, we'll ask the big questions that you need to answer before you start, about your objectives, your reader, and your voice. And we'll look at ways that you can plan and structure your work. In part two, we'll look at the building blocks of writing, and words, sentences, paragraphs, and the whole thing. I'll take you through some ancient techniques that can turn your words into a powerful engine for achieving your goals. Then, in part three, we'll go into the vital art of editing and how to test your words to see if they are clear and achieve your objectives. And finally, I'll share some of the techniques that I use to be a productive and successful writer, getting into a state of flow and never suffering from writer's block. And throughout, there'll be short exercises and tests so that you can check your understanding and hone your skills. In the next lesson, you can download a resource pack that includes all the exercises for the course, or you can download them as you go. This course is focused on helping you to succeed, but success means hard work, and realize from the start that it must always be you, the writer, doing the hard work and never your reader. As the American author Nathaniel Hawthorne said, "Easy reading is damn hard writing." In my career as a professional speechwriter, I've written everything from conference speeches, parliamentary debates, even an award-winning address to a joint meeting of the United States Congress. I've also written hundreds of articles for everything from Newsweek, The Wall Street Journal, and Wired, not to mention countless other titles all around the world. And throughout my career, through face-to-face training, I've given hundreds of people the tools, the knowledge, and the confidence that they need to write better than they ever thought possible. Not to mention the tens of thousands of people who have already taken this course. I'm now going to do the same for you. The thing to remember is that I wasn't always a good writer. I was only ever average at school and I don't have an English degree. It was only as an adult that I started to take a serious interest in improving my writing. And when I did, it changed my life. So know that if I can do it, so can you. One tip before we start: I always try to speak clearly and at a steady pace. If you'd like to speed things up a bit or slow them down, don't forget that you can control the playback speed in the settings. And with that, let's get started. Section summary. In the following lessons, we'll examine why clear writing is so important. We'll look at what clear English is and debunk some of the myths around it. And we'll look at the evidence that shows why mastering clear English is vital for your success. We'll also look at the importance of understanding literacy levels. Now, if you don't need convincing as to the importance of clear writing, do feel free to skip these lessons and jump right into the techniques in the next section. But if you do, you will miss out on some fascinating insights on what people actually want from their writing. What is clear English? For me, clear English, clear writing, is about one thing and one thing only: getting things done. We use words every day to achieve our goals. They are our weapon of choice, but words, like any weapon, when used incorrectly, can do far more harm than good. If you commit your words to paper or screen, they'd better be good. They'd better be on your side. They'd better be fighting for you and not against you. Clear English is about finding the right words and using them in the right way to supercharge your career or your business. The right words, well used, can help to change the way that people think, feel, or act, whether they're your customers, your employees, or your boss. Clear English is not dumbed down. The idea of dumbing down is a real concern for many people when they are trying to improve their writing. It should be. It's often the very last thing you should do. Now, occasionally, removing complexity to get across a really simple message is the right thing to do. If you're dealing with a very large audience, such as the general public, or if you only have the briefest of moments to grab someone's attention, then boiling down something to its most simple message, to its essence, is crucial. You see this in advertising and politics all the time. Think of Apple's 1,000 songs in your pocket, or Obama's change you can believe in. However, you often need the complexity, especially at work. It might be the detail of a company merger, the technical specifications of a new product, or the implementation of a government policy. In each of these examples, removing complexity, it's just not an option. The reader needs the complexity. But the reader also has to understand the complexity. That is where clear writing comes in. Some things are just complicated. Markets are complicated. Public policy is complicated. Theoretical physics, that is certainly complicated. But as Albert Einstein once said, everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. Quite right. As a writer, your challenge is to get the complexity across in a way that your reader will understand. Comprehension is key. If someone doesn't understand what you are writing, if it's not clear, then what is the point of writing anything in the first place? But if you are clear, if you are understood, then you can move mountains. Think simple, not simplistic. Clear English is not a blanket ban on jargon. Imagine two doctors discussing a gravely ill patient. I know that if I listened in, I wouldn't understand half of what they were talking about. They'll use words, phrases, and acronyms that I've never heard of, let alone understand. I simply do not share their knowledge or their experience. But that's okay. Let's say that they know each other really well and have worked together for many years. They're both communicating with an audience of one, and they know that audience extremely well. For them, technical medical terms, hospital jargon, and acronyms that appear obscure to anyone else don't hinder their communication, they help it. In fact, if they didn't use that sort of language, their audience, each other, would get annoyed and frustrated. In these specific circumstances, jargon and acronyms are just what the doctor ordered. The problem comes if they then turn around and use that same language when talking to their patient, or to the patient's family, or even to medical professionals from a different speciality or a different hospital. The bonds of shared knowledge and experience, they're not there anymore. What was helpful with one audience a moment ago is now a recipe for misunderstanding, confusion, and frustration. On occasion, within very specific circumstances, and when used sparingly, technical language can be helpful. If you know for certain that using it will aid communication, then go ahead. But if there is even a shadow of a hint of a slither of doubt, don't. And don't, whatever you do, use this as an excuse to stuff your writing with horrible, lazy, ugly words. If you do, you'll only be shooting yourself in the foot. And then you really will need a doctor. So ask yourself, are these words a bridge or a barrier? Clear English is not a comms thing. I've heard people argue many times that I don't need to worry about this stuff. I don't write for the public. Big mistake. Ask yourself, is it important that your clients are happy? Is it important that you do your job properly? Is it important that you are respected by your peers and that your boss is pleased with your performance? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, and I suspect it might be, then clear writing is essential. As I said before, we are all professional writers and we need to work hard to be good at it. If we're not, then most of the time we spend writing, which is often most of our time, is wasted. Personally, I don't come to work to waste my time. If I did, I would expect to not be in work for too much longer. Everyone who writes anything, who wants to achieve something, who wants to change the way that people think, feel, or act, must be able to communicate clearly. So no, it's not a comms thing. Clear English is about every word you write, to everyone, always. It's that simple. Takeaways. Clear writing is about getting things done. Clear writing is about explaining complexity. Clear writing is about helping your reader to understand the complexity of your subject. Only use technical language and jargon if it is genuinely a bridge to understanding. It is usually a barrier. Clear writing is for everyone who wants to succeed at work, not just communications professionals. In the next lesson, we'll look at some of the evidence that shows why writing in clear English is so important. The evidence. In this lesson, I'm going to show you some of the evidence as to why clear English is so important. In 2012, Christopher Trudeau at the Thomas M. Cooley Law School in Michigan conducted some research into the use of language in legal letters and documents. He found two things, one obvious, the other more surprising. First, when given a choice, 80% of people preferred sentences written in clear English. For example, 97% preferred "among other things" over the Latin phrase "inter alia." And he found that the more complex the issue, the greater the preference was for clear, simple words. So far, so obvious. But the research also found that the more educated the person and the more specialist their knowledge, the greater was their preference for clear English. Those with a bachelor's degree had a greater preference for clear English than those without one. Those with a master's degree or a PhD had a greater preference than those with a bachelor's. And those with a Juris Doctor, a specialist legal qualification, had the highest preference of all. And they're lawyers. This confirms that even if people do understand the long, complicated words we use, the jargon and the acronyms, it doesn't mean that they want to read them. The old argument, or as I prefer to call it, poor excuse for lazy writing, that these readers will understand it, may be true, but it doesn't mean that they want to read it. Do you? Remember this, those with the highest literacy levels and the greatest expertise also tend to have the most to read and the least time available to read it. They just don't have the time to wade through reams of dry, complicated text. Using short, simple words and sentences, rather than long, complicated ones, improves what psychologists refer to as the processing fluency of language. Imagine your words are a meal. If you try to swallow a great big juicy steak whole, you're going to choke. But if you cut it up into small, bite-sized chunks, it'll go down nicely. Information is just the same. Too much in one go and you're stuffed. Too many long, complex words, too many long, meandering sentences, too many big, fat paragraphs making up a document seemingly without end, and you'll lose your reader. But if you make your words easy to digest, your reader will keep coming back for more. Takeaways. Most people prefer documents written clearly. The more educated your reader, the higher their preference for clear writing. In the next lesson, we'll look at the vital importance of understanding your reader's level of literacy. Literacy levels. One thing you must never, ever do, no matter who you are writing for, is talk down to your reader. Never. Always respect the person or people you are writing for, no matter how hard that may be. People may be different from you in many ways. You may disagree with them. You may even dislike them, but that is no excuse. Remember, when you are writing, your objective is to change the way people think, feel, or act. If you patronize people, you will fail in a heartbeat. Don't do it. Now, while it's essential to never talk down to your audience, it's also important to understand how literate they are. A person's literacy level, their ability to read and write, is often described as their reading age. This generally bears no relation to a person's actual age. Instead, a reading age is the average reading ability expected of a child of that age in full-time education. So if a 10-year-old girl is meeting the standards of reading and writing expected of her at school, we say that she has a reading age of 10. Likewise, if her 40-year-old father reads at the same level, he too will have a reading age of 10. Most people reach their highest level of reading ability by about their mid to late teens. Think about it. Has your ability to read improved since you left school? Not the amount you read or the subjects you read about, but your actual ability to read the words on the page. Now, if you've specialised in a particular field, then you may well have picked up specific vocabulary. But unless you've worked to improve your literacy since then, it's probably stayed about the same. A bright 17-year-old and a bright 70-year-old may both have a reading age of 16. This means that in the previous year, the 17-year-old has stayed at the same level of English comprehension, just like the 70-year-old has over the past 54 years. A common mistake that people make is to overestimate people's reading ability. In the United Kingdom, the average reading age is just 9 years old. An interesting way of looking at this is through newspapers. Remember them? The average reading age of The Sun newspaper, UK's largest selling daily newspaper, is about 8 years old. The reading age of the more highbrow Guardian newspaper is about 14. This doesn't mean that The Sun talks down to its readers. Far from it. It just uses words that it knows its audience will understand. So buy instead of procure, go instead of proceed, or help instead of assist. And we'll come back to word choice later in the course. According to UK government research, 1 in 6 adults in the UK struggles with literacy. That's over 5 million people whose ability to read and write is at or below the level expected of an 11-year-old child. This can create significant problems for them in day-to-day life. It can also present difficulties and opportunities for you. Having a good idea of the reading age of your audience is incredibly important. If you use language that is more difficult than your reader can understand, you'll lose them. If you're writing for an educated audience of degree level or above, then a reading age of about 14 to 16 should be fine. If it's for the general public, however, a reading age of 8 to 10 would be much more appropriate. It's the difference between being understood and being ignored. Finding out the reading level of your work is simple. There are many online tools that can tell you how easy or hard your piece is to read. 2 favourites of mine are readable.com and Hemingway, and we'll look at these later in the course. Throughout this course, we'll look at ways that can improve the clarity of your work. This also helps to keep its average reading age low and accessible. By respecting your reader and respecting the fact that different people have different reading abilities, you will significantly increase the chances that your work will achieve its goals. Takeaways. A reading age is the average reading ability expected of a child of that age in full-time education. The average reading age in the UK is just 9 years old. Aim for a reading age of 14 to 16 years old for a professional, degree-educated audience, 8 to 10 for the general public. Section review. In this introduction to the course, we've found out that clear English is about using your words to accomplish your goals, to get things done. We've seen how clear English is about using clear, simple words to get across complexity in the simplest possible way, and that there is a beauty in simplicity that is entirely absent in jargon-laden, highly technical, acronym-heavy writing. We've seen how clear English is for everyone, not just for journalists or marketing people. It is for everyone who wants to change the way that people think, feel, or act, which is just about everyone. We've seen the evidence that shows how frustrated people can get when presented with bad writing, and how they respond far better to simple, comprehensible, clear English. And we've seen how important it is to neither disrespect your reader nor to overestimate their level of literacy. So if you want your writing to succeed, I hope you now see that you need to embrace clear English. Your journey to being a good writer has just begun, but before you start putting pen to paper, there are some important things that you have to do first. So it's now time for part 1 of the course, before you write. Before you write. Summary. Clear writing starts with the words on the page, right? Wrong. Clear writing starts with the thoughts in your head. Clear words can only come from clear thoughts. For without clear thinking, clear writing is impossible. Albert Einstein said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." And Einstein knew a thing or two about complicated stuff. Yet he was also smart enough to know that if he wanted others to understand it too, he He couldn't just blurt out the extraordinary ideas he had in his head willy-nilly. He had to carefully consider the best and clearest way of explaining his thoughts. Thinking is an investment with a guaranteed high rate of return. Spending time thinking up front saves far more time, effort, and stress down the line. In part 1 of this course, we're going to look at the things you need to think about before you start writing. This part has 2 sections. The first is about the importance of clear thinking and the 3 big questions that you need to ask yourself before you start writing. What are your objectives? Who are your readers? And what is your voice? Now, that last one might sound a little odd, but all will become clear soon enough. The second section is about your ideas and structuring those ideas to best achieve your objectives. Think first. The payoff is huge. But before we move on, spare a thought about another question: whether to write in the first place. What's going to be the most effective way of achieving your objective? Instead of, for example, an email, perhaps you could pick up the phone or, heaven forbid, get up and have a face-to-face conversation with someone. Which would be most effective? Which do you think your reader would prefer? Which form of communication presents you in the best light? There are so many different ways to communicate. In this course, we're only looking at one, at writing. But don't forget that there are alternatives. After all, you're not reading this, I'm talking to you in a video. In the next lesson, we'll look at setting your objectives. Think about your objective. What's the point? That should be the first question going through your mind every time you put pen to paper or fingertips to keyboard. In fact, at work, it should be a question you can answer clearly for everything you do, or else, why are you doing it? So if you're spending time writing an email, what's the point? If you're writing a report, what's the point? If you're writing an advert, what's the point? I said previously that all writing is an attempt to make people think, feel, or act differently. Which is it? Be as specific as possible. Define your objective clearly. When it comes to objectives, always think about the outcome. So don't start with, I need to write an email to Pete. Take a step back and ask yourself what it is specifically that you want from Pete. You ask Pete for an update on his project. In your head, it's obvious that you just need to know that everything is okay with no major problems. A few lines in an email will do. But because you've not been specific in your request, he might think that you need a detailed account of everything he's doing. He'll then waste hours of his time and your money if you're his boss, writing a report that you don't need. Spending a few moments to be clear about your objective, what you want from Pete, will save hours of his day. So if you're going to write an email, think about the outcome you want from that email. So your objective could be, I want Pete to give me a brief overview of the main financial risks of Project X by the end of the day. If you're writing a report, your objective is not, I'll write a report. Think about the outcome you want. It could be, this report must convince these specific potential investors to back my business. It will set out the concept of my ideas and how it meets their investment goals, how I will implement it, and how it will make them money. If you're writing an advert, your objective is not, I'll write an advert. Think about the outcome. It could be, I will write a Facebook ad to encourage this specific group of people to come to my website and sign up for my newsletter. Define your objective or objectives for everything you write in as much detail as possible. Write it down, or if it's something short, like a simple email, at least state its purpose explicitly in your head. Now, sometimes you may have more than one objective, or you may have an apparent objective, such as to write a memo on the conference you attended on behalf of your boss, but a different real objective, such as to impress your boss about an idea that you put forward at the conference. Again, be explicit about what you want to achieve, if only in your head. Only if you have a clear idea of what it is that you want to achieve will you stand any chance of actually achieving it. And if you don't, you won't. Objective setting tips. Now, sometimes it's hard to pin down your objectives straight away. So if you're not entirely sure what your objectives are, here are a few tips that can help. First, think SMART. The ideal objective should be as specific as possible, be measurable to give an idea of what sort of progress is being made. You should be able to assign it to a specific person or people. It should be realistic given available resources. There's no point in demanding the impossible. And it should be time related with clear deadlines. I've seen people use other words, achievable instead of assignable, relevant instead of realistic. It doesn't really matter. What matters is having a structured way to think about your objectives. Second, even if you're not 100% clear about your objectives, still try and be as specific as you can. Write something down and then see if you can dig a little deeper. Over time and with more thought and experimentation, you will get better at nailing down what it is you want. So even if your objectives are refined over time, having something concrete to start with will really help you to get what you want sooner. So you might start with, I want to promote my business. Then, with a little more thought, you might go to, I want to promote my business to people in London. Then you might go to, I want to promote my business to 18 to 24-year-olds in London using social media in August, the hottest month of the year. Notice how this fits the SMART criteria. It's very specific. It's measurable. You can measure social media in a million different ways. It's assigned to a specific person, to you. It certainly feels realistic. And it has a specific time period, August. Slowly, as you learn more and experiment more, you can refine your objectives. And the more refined your objectives, that's right, the more likely you are to achieve them. Finally, use this little poem by Rudyard Kipling. I have 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. I call them what and where and when and how and why and who. Kipling, author of great novels like The Jungle Book, Kim, and the Just So stories, would always ask himself these questions to clarify and shape his writing. Writers of all kinds ask these same questions the world over. Now, it's your turn. Takeaways. Everything you write should have a clear, outcome-based objective. Use SMART objectives: specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-bound. Remember the questions from Rudyard Kipling's poem. What and where and when, and how and why and who. In the next lesson, we'll look at the central importance of your reader. Think about your reader. Okay, so now you have a clear idea of your objective. It's time to ask the second big question. Who is your reader? One of the main reasons for unsuccessful writing, and here I'm absolutely not talking about fiction, is writing for yourself rather than for your reader. It's like cooking roast beef for your vegetarian friends just because you like roast beef. It doesn't go down very well. When you write, don't write for you, write for your reader. Make life as easy for them as possible, even if it makes your job more difficult, because it almost certainly will. You're writing because you want something. If you want your reader to think, feel, or act differently, then you have to be the one who does the hard work, not your reader. What's your language? Most people would like to think that they treat everyone the same, or at least I know I do. But when it comes to language, we don't. We treat everybody differently, even if we're not aware that we're doing it. We talk to very young children in a totally different way to how we speak to our boss. We talk to our friends and to our customers completely differently, just as we talk to our oldest friends differently to people we've just met. Many people even subtly change the way that they speak depending on the accent or background of the other person. This isn't hypocrisy or being two-faced. It's good communication. This sort of social adaptation helps us to build and cement relationships. It's an innate human skill which has helped societies to form and grow throughout history. But all too often, as soon as we start putting words down on paper, all that wonderful subtlety goes out the window. It's as though because there isn't anyone right in front of us, we start talking to ourselves. Now, I've written articles for everything from local newspapers to the Wall Street Journal. I've written thousands of speeches to be delivered to everyone from members of the United States Congress to primary school children and people for whom English is a second, third or fourth language. Did I use the same words, the same language, the same style for each one? Of course not. You would never talk to primary school children as if they were politicians, just as you would never speak to politicians as though they were primary school children. Well, anyway, just as it was vital that I tailored my words to match the audience, so you must tailor your words to match your readers. So when writing, ask two questions. Who is your reader? And what is your relationship with your reader? Who is your reader? Knowing and understanding your reader is essential. If you don't write for your reader, then it's unlikely that you'll achieve your objectives. For everything you write, have in your mind the clearest possible picture of your reader. What do you know about them that will help you to change the way that they think, feel or act? Who are they? What do they do? And importantly, what do they want? If your reader is someone you know, such as your boss or a colleague or a customer you have a relationship with, answering this question might be relatively straightforward. But even then, take a moment to create a clear mental image of them in your mind. Don't just rush in. Don't let your familiarity with your reader breed contempt in your writing. If you don't know your reader personally, this is more difficult, but even more important. Try to make as few assumptions about them as you can, and be acutely aware of any assumptions that you do make. If you can, speak to similar people that you know. For example, if you're targeting doctors for a new healthcare website and you happen to know some doctors, speak to them about what you're doing. Or at the very least, create a clear image of them in your head. Read publications that doctors read. Find out more about their wants and needs and write directly for them. Whether you're writing for one person or to millions, be as personal as possible. When you read something, you never read it on behalf of the public. You read it as you, as an individual. So when you write, even if it's for a huge and diverse audience, don't think of it so much as an amorphous mob. Think instead of one individual person reading your words. This is really important if you're writing bulk emails or letters. Just because you are writing something to lots of people, each individual will want that email to be as tailored as possible. Think of this course. Tens of thousands of people have taken this course from all over the world, from all sorts of different backgrounds. But when I speak, I don't speak to them. I speak to you, personally, as an individual. That's how we connect. What is your relationship with your reader? In many Latin-based languages, for example French, Spanish or Italian, the familiar and the formal are separated into different words. In French, for example, if you don't know someone very well, or if they're senior to you in some way, if they're your boss or an older person, you would use the more polite vous form. However, if you're speaking to a friend or a colleague, you would use tu. They mean the same thing, but imply a different relationship. While we don't have that useful distinction in English, you should still be very aware of your relationship with your reader and write accordingly. So who is your reader? Do you know them well or not at all? Do you work with them? Are they a customer, a supplier, a rival? Just as you wouldn't write an email to your best friend in the same way that you would your grandmother, so don't write to your customers in the same way that you would your boss. In fact, if you can, don't write to one customer in the same way that you would another. Always be as specific as you can. Another important aspect of this is to ask the question, how do they feel about me and my message? Now, this is especially important if you're delivering bad news. For example, if you're going to be late delivering your product to a customer, or if your project has failed to achieve its aims, put yourself in your reader's shoes. They may be angry or upset. Their first thought might be to find a new supplier, or even a new employee. Think of how they may feel and try to take the sting out of it up front. If your order is late, can you offer a discount or a refund? If the project is failing, what solutions can you offer to help it succeed? Your words have the power to change the way people think, feel, or act. Use that power. Make your reader act in your favor, or at least diminish the blow. So, are there right and wrong words to use? Are there special techniques or some magic algorithm that can shortcut your way to the perfect outcome? Sadly not. In each and every case, it will require careful thought and hard work. But your relationship, what it is and what you want it to be, should be at the front of your mind at all times. Takeaways. When you write, write for your reader, not for yourself. Before you write, visualize your reader in as much detail as you can and tailor your words accordingly. Put yourself in your reader's shoes. How will they feel when they read what you have written? Use the power of your words to influence your reader's behavior. In the next lesson, we'll look at the importance of your voice. Thinking about your voice. Do you know who you are? This may seem like an odd question, but bear with me. It's important if you are to make the most of your writing. I'm going to split this question into two parts. Who are you, and who do you want to be? Who are you? My writing career is unusual in the sense that my words have generally not had my name attached to them. As a speechwriter for other people, I have to write as though the words are theirs. I have to get their voice inside my own head and write as though it were my own. The fact that this has not led to some deep-level psychological trauma is practically a miracle. Sometimes you may have to do a similar thing. You may be asked to draft a letter for your boss. Perhaps you've been asked to write the foreword for the annual report in the name of the chief executive. Whatever it is, you will need to think carefully about who they are, what they sound like, and reflect that in your writing. This is a more subtle exercise than that of a stand-up comedian. You don't get extra points for picking up on every tick or foible, for exaggerating every quirk. Your reader will not be forensically dissecting your words to unmask the true culprit, like some extraordinarily dull murder mystery. No, you just have to write so that the reader does not sense that something is wrong. I'm now going to tell you my secret. The secret recipe that has satisfied the egos of well over a dozen very different and very demanding politicians from all parts of the political spectrum. The secret? Simplicity. A dogged, determined, purposeful devotion to making every sentence, every paragraph, every word as clear and simple as possible. Sound easy? It isn't. But through the constant practice of the lessons you're learning in this course, you can do it too. Who do you want to be? Pretending to be someone else is easy. Being you, that takes a bit more effort. When it comes to writing, who do you want to be? When you speak with your customers, your colleagues, or with the general public, what impression do you want to make? How do you want them to feel about you? When I started creating this course, I took a number of conscious decisions. I wanted my words, my voice, to be friendly and approachable. I wanted you, my reader, actually my viewer, to feel as though I were talking directly to you, holding your hand as I guide you through all of this, your clear English friend. I could have taken a different approach. I could have been your stern lecturer. This would imply a greater emotional distance, entirely focused on the task at hand, with no stories about how I started out as a writer, or little jokes about treating politicians like primary school children. For a course to help people improve their written English, this would have been perfectly appropriate. But I wouldn't have enjoyed it anywhere near as much, and I wouldn't have told you such irrelevant things as to whether I enjoyed doing this course or not. These are decisions that I've taken, and they are decisions that you will need to take when you write. Of course, you can choose differently depending on who your reader is. If you're writing to your boss or to your colleagues, you may choose one style. Then, when you're writing to your customers, you may choose another. The style you choose is not as important as the reasons for choosing it and the fact that you make a conscious decision and remain consistent. There are many huge companies that have a very informal style with their customers. If something goes wrong on a Google site, for example, you'll see a message like, "Ah, snap, something went wrong, sorry." Whereas if the same thing happens on a bank's website, you might see a far more formal message. Due to technical issues, some of our customers are unable to view their current account, savings or loan account. We are working hard to resolve this and apologise for any inconvenience this may cause. Both are polite and perfectly acceptable. But at some point, people in both companies made a conscious decision that they would have a particular voice, and they stuck to it. This is what you must do too. Consistency is key. If you're a member of a team where many of you write content for the web, everyone should have a similar voice. Not in order to become a single mindless automaton, but so that your readers feel safe and secure on your site or in your app. This goes to the heart of your brand. Your voice is part of your identity, and if you mess with it from day to day, you'll weaken your brand and weaken your company. If one day content sounds light and friendly, but the next is stiff and formal, your users, your paying customers, will quickly lose trust in who you are, and you'll lose your customers. But make a decision and stay consistent, and you'll be fine. Takeaways. When writing for someone else, your words must reflect their voice. The best way to do this is to keep your writing clear and simple. Make a conscious decision about the style of your own voice. Be consistent. Structure. Summary. Okay, you've zeroed in on your objective, you know your reader inside and out, and you know who you are, which is always a plus. The next step is to start writing, right? Well, not yet. Remember, the point of everything you write is to change the way people think, feel, or act. You want to take them from where they are to where you want them to be. But you can't usually get them there in one great leap. You have to take them by the hand and guide them step by step to their destination. And for that you need a map. And that map is called structure. In this section, I'm going to show you ways to get all of your ideas down on paper, sorting the good ones from the bad, and then look at how you can order those points, with each one leading naturally to the next, to complete that journey and achieve your objective. Hello, I hope you enjoyed this free extract from my course, Better Business Writing Skills. This is the first 11 videos. I hope you found them valuable. If you want to carry on, this course contains a further 44 videos. As well as structure, I cover the art of writing words, sentences, and paragraphs that can help you achieve your goals. I reveal the ancient secrets of persuasion and techniques to make your writing really stand out and engage with your reader. I then take you through how to edit your work to make it as good as possible. And then I share some techniques that I use every day to be a better writer, including never suffering from writer's block. If that all sounds interesting to you, click on the link in the description below, and I'll see you in there.